Yeah. You ever just read an article, see some news out there, and your first reaction when you read it is, you kind of just question it, and you don't really know how to verbalize those words. So, is what comes out of your mouth. That was me the past 24 hours. Hope you guys are all doing well. A little bit of a different intro out there for CSGO news, but hope you guys all had great weekends. Some great articles linked down below. If you guys want the full reads, I highly advise you to do so. Brought to us by, of course, by the K. First of all, and Dust 2, some crazy rumors in the CSGO scene, especially for North American CSGO. Now, why I say North American is because, of course, Cloud9 still doing their majority European lineup. We'll talk about their projected full lineup in a minute or two here. But first of all, as announced by the K just yesterday, will be Kioshima apparently to depart this roster. And this was the article that really had me going, in terms of reaction. So cheers to you guys. Hope you have a caffeinated beverage. I have my coffee, and welcome back to CSGO News. And this is a roster I certainly think is in shambles. I have no clue what their approach is going to be. Ever since Flusha's untimely departure, of course, what he's been going through, you cannot blame him whatsoever, but that has really put a hole in this sinking ship of what we now call Cloud9. Zellsis soon after, and I think I really can't argue against these two departures. If you have a solid plan in mind, which we'll talk about in a minute here, brought to us by Dust 2, their projected full lineup, but still, I can't really argue too much, because if you were to kick two players, Flusha left on his own, but if you were to kick two weaker members, you likely would have targeted Kioshima and Zellsis. I know I'm a great fan. I love to see the experience of Zellsis and where he's going to go in the future. I love to see Kioshima anywhere, but if you were to pick two players, they probably would be your two, but if you don't have a backup plan in store for this, well, then there's some open questions from the community as to what the heck Cloud9 is doing, especially because also confirmed by Decay, this does leave 6 players with major spots. Yes, you have Rush and Automatic, seemingly that's core 2, alongside Golden, who did not play at the major, although he was listed as a player. Those are your 3 spots for Cloud9, but that does mean Flusha, Zellsis, Kioshima apparently also getting spots at the major. Flusha and Kioshima, of course, playing. Zellsis was listed as a coach, but he actually did play, and apparently, according to Decay and his sources, they also get spots for the major. That's 6 players, 3 on the team, 3 not, now with major spots, which would mean if Flusha, Kioshima, and Zellsis wanted to team up, they apparently could get a major spot if there is no rule change to, of course, forbid this. Even Zellsis tweeting out a joke about this, if you want some big sticker money, why not just team together for a weekend, get a free major spot? It is crazy. Like, when I saw this, I was like, ugh. Now again, we can expect probably a rule change to forbid this in some way, but I don't think I speak alone in this. I think a lot of us out there would find it a bit ironic and a bit comedic that 2 of the players that you kick in Kioshima and Zellsis, if this does go through, they team up with Flusha and they then take your major spot, because it's very unlikely that they would get a free major spot. It'd just be a random added extra team there, so likely it'd be one of the 2 trios to get the actual spot, and it'd be heavily ironic and almost comical to see the players you kick actually take your spot back from you. But also furthering this rumor of Kioshima departure is now the alleged 2 players to fill in for the remainder of that roster. Like I said before, Cloud9 seemingly have this core 2 because we have not really seen Golden back on the roster so far. Rush, Automatic, Golden, and now to be joined by 2 OpTic Gaming members, allegedly K0nfig alongside Jugi. And this also had, like, I don't understand what's going on, but we're gonna try and break it down, because yes, off the bat, top of the head, you think K0nfig, okay, makes sense. Best OpTic player, has a high ceiling cap. I like it. Can be a bit toxic at times. We've seen him trash talk, but hey, a lot of us out there love that trash talk, myself included. It means you're confident in your abilities, and he really should be. But altogether, when we look at the OpTic roster, what they really did on paper, it was borderline nothing, especially with the talent they certainly had. And Jugi, young, up and coming, also though an opper, so you think, is Automatic going to go to secondary? Does he want to go back to the rifle? I don't think Jugi wants to be on the rifle, so underdeveloped talent, I think, but still, again, high potential. But then you look at this roster on paper, and it seems just so random. Never before did I think that these 5 players would be playing together in a Cloud9 lineup that would be majority EU. And my main thought is this. Now, I don't think there's many fans out there remaining, because this roster has struggled. This organization has struggled for 2 to 3 years, ever since their prime, back when the E-League days, that being OpTic Gaming. But still, the remaining fans out there, I must say, this move, if it does come true, if they take away K0nfig and Jugi from this OpTic Gaming roster, this, in my mind, effectively kills the OpTic Gaming roster. And yes, there's going to be people out there say, oh, you can't kill what's already dead, which fair play. right? On paper, this roster did not really succeed too much throughout 2018 and so far throughout 2019. But when it comes down to it, you look at what they had on paper, what's left to actually pick up for this roster is probably going to be a downgrade. Now, still, you could argue, right? Even with the upgrade they previously had for the former OpTic roster, they couldn't accomplish much. So what is there to lose? Well, there's plenty to lose out there when you're left with a remaining roster who I don't really have too much confidence in right now. We have a Refrez who joined the roster based off one LAN performance. He played pretty well for Cloud9. We have a Snappy who's now widely regarded as a pretty poor IGL for what he's done with this roster. Unfortunately, a lot of those errors and a lot of that fault falls on the IGL of a team, and I can't really argue against this. He is certainly the target of much hate out there for this OpTic roster. So yes, I can see maybe you pick up like a NATO Sapphics, right? Take him into the roster, but then you also have to think about if you take in a NATO Sapphics, he's opping, and he's also probably trying to IGL. So what do you do with Snappy? You're still left with half a roster. This is crazy news. Leave a comment down below what you guys think. I am certainly curious. We have a Cloud9 potential new roster. Also, the players who have left Cloud9 can still potentially have a major spot. We have a potential Cloud9 roster who could actually be killing off the current OpTic roster. Dude, this is crazy. And in the shortest news of the weekend, it's actually HR. HellRaisers, I think, of all the swaps out there so far, making the best move of any team. Of course, they lose Woxic to the new Mouse Sports roster. They have now picked up, as expected, Oskar to the roster. Alongside him, though, notorious coach out there, well noted, that being LMBT being back to the roster. I think one of the best moves, one of the simplest moves we've seen so far. Oskar still a world-renowned opper, and in many people's eyes, a better opper than Woxic. So you upgrade him, and also they take out Dead Fox to the roster, who, yes, he is a clutch player on LAN and big-time events. He has come down to clutch moments, but all in all, in general, has certainly fallen off ever since 2017 when I first saw him play at major events and really be able to frag. That fragging power has ever since gone downhill. But either way, I think HR here come away with a huge positive. They pick up a world-renowned opper for borderline free, and they get a good coach in the trade-off as well. So of all the trades out there we've seen so far, the simplest move, you pick up Oskar, you bench Dead Fox, and I think a pretty good move all in all for HR. And then very lastly, yes, there's tons of CSGO news out there. Expect a packed episode tomorrow because there's been so many stories in the past 48 hours. I can only cover the top ones for today. So come back tomorrow, guys. Have plenty of stories for you. But in the last story that I get way too excited about, that is Windigo taking the WESG 2018 title very impressively, their biggest prize pool win ever as an organization or a roster, off the backs of players like Poison, you know, a rising star out there, very well-noted name. Also Ships, though, well-deserved MVP for the event. That guy, a great guy. I've had a few conversations with him back and forth on Twitter. Just a very nice guy out there. And this roster is what I expected back in the European minor. If you guys remember, I did predictions for them. They were my sleeper team. Unfortunately, did not make it through to the major qualifier. And also remember, this is a team who I still believe is in the process of being sold off to a different organization, but under the Windigo name, they now take their biggest win ever, a WESG $500,000 first place prize. They take down MIBR in the quarterfinals. Huge shock, but also keep in mind for this, if there's one thing to take away from this, MIBR I think looked pretty poor in the matchup, but still not taking away from that, a victory is a victory. They sweep G2 in the semis, and they take down AGO in the finals, and it was amazing to see how happy these guys were. Of course, a huge check for them, a huge check for G2 as well, $100,000 prize, what might be their biggest prize pool they take away in 2019. Keep in mind they also had Body in their roster, so that was his last match with that team. So some great last game for him for now as a part of that roster. I would say most disappointingly though is probably going to be Fnatic. They lose to AGO and they lose to G2 pretty convincingly, although a few overtimes throughout those series. Fnatic, I would say, you know, had a pretty good chance here alongside a team like MIBR to come away with a bigger prize pool. Either way though, still pretty decent finish for Fnatic, but some disappointing losses to keep in mind for the future. But as always, hope you guys all enjoy this episode of CSGO News. Are honestly probably my favorite episode. I love starting out Mondays like this. I mean, I'm really curious what you guys think about the move so far between OpTic and Cloud9. I gotta say, the questions are whirling for OpTic and their future, but also for Cloud9. And now they're two former North American teams, so that's why I love them so much. But they're now, of course, European teams, so they're your guys' teams. All right, they're not mine to worry about. So hope you guys all enjoy. I will see you back here tomorrow with some great packed news. And until then, take care of yourselves. Drink some coffee, drink some caffeine. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Take care.